Quanell, a great number of Americans celebrated the violent stabbing attack on Derek Chauvin, the police officer convicted of murdering George Floyd, that occurred in the immediate aftermath of the release of a documentary that questioned the integrity of his conviction. In that documentary, it pointed out that there was discrepancies with the autopsy that was amended after the fact, that there was a failure to move the trial from Minneapolis despite the protests and chanting going outside that could be heard by the jury, and obviously both local and national media exposure. And there are some people that have suggested the attack was in retaliation for that in an effort to silence him, which is just absurd, right? I mean, it's just absurd. And that's the conversation. People happy that he was stabbed, and people that think it was some sort of deep state evil conspiracy to silence this innocent man that's rotting in prison. And the truth is, it was neither of those things, right? The truth is that this was another example of how horribly violent our penal system is in America, that creates situations where when people enter prisons, both at the state and federal level, they're immediately forced to join racialized gangs based on their ethnicity and skin color. And if they don't, they suffer violence from both people that look like them and people that don't. That you are forced to either become a victim or more of a victimizer, right? And the sad thing is, unlike Chauvin, who's in there for murder, you have a great number of people who are still in there downstream from the war on poverty that masquerades as a war on drugs. In fact, greatly on the federal level, implemented much more serious punishments by Joe Biden and his ilk in the 90s that has taken these people, these weak people, and put them in prison systems where they are either taught to be monsters or are destroyed. So while I can understand why there are people that are happy that there was some violence visited on someone they see as this horrible figure and who exemplifies the problems with the paradigmatic problems of policing in America, and on the other side, people horrified that someone they think was an innocent man convicted of a horrible crime. But the truth is, the conversations that this should be spurring is, how do we fix our penal system? How do we make our penal system safer for all prisoners? How do we get to a point where people that are sent to prison can actually go there and get reformed, not turned into greater monsters? And frankly,
Charles,
how do we stop sending so many people to prison that aren't murderers?
But Charles, I believe that what you're doing is mixing apples and artichokes. The subject matter at hand right now that we're discussing is the stabbing of Derek Chauvin. And this former Minneapolis, Minnesota police officer who took his time patiently and put his knee on the neck of a defenseless man who was crying out and begging for his mother, begging and pleading that he could not breathe over and over again. And Mr. Chauvin sat there with a stone look on his face, like he was enjoying every minute of it. When people were yelling, he can't breathe. When people were yelling, he can't breathe. Then he put his hands on his pistol to say to those people who witnessing Mr. Chauvin kill Mr. Floyd, you bet not come over here. I'll use this pistol on you. And so he murdered George Floyd and was convicted for murder by a jury of his peers. There was an ongoing running understanding in the black community for generations that if a black man ever harmed a police officer, they would never take him to jail, that he would be killed on the scene wherever they find him. And that if he was arrested, they would beat him to where he looked like the Elephant Man when he got to jail. So you expect black folks to have sympathy and empathy for a killer cop who enjoyed what he was doing. Even one of his other officers tried to get him to move, and he wouldn't move. I don't give a damn about him being stabbed in jail. Because if the roles were reversed and George Floyd had killed Derek Chauvin, all you cop lovers, including you, Mr. Adams, would not be talking about, oh, well, he got stabbed in jail. We need to make the cop killer's environment a little bit more safer because, our penal institutions are not safe for criminals who are locked away and convicted of crimes. It's been that way. Prison is no fairy tale. Prison is no dream vacation. Prison is what it is. But at the end of the day, nobody sheds a tear in my community for Derek Chauvin.
Again, I wasn't asking anyone to have any empathy for Mr. Chauvin. In fact, I expressed there was nothing that I said that could be interpreted that way. And I know you want to discount my conversations about, oh, you're a cop lover, but the truth is, right, when you criticize police, right, it's just in the moment, and it is just a blanket, empty criticism and a request for money, where I have been arguing for paradigmatic police reform and working towards that for decades, both in actual actions and in scholarship, right? Because while I think we need robust law enforcement, because the people I think that suffer the most from the abandonment that we've seen in the last few years are poor people of color, but they're also the same people that suffered the most from the misguided war on drugs and oppression that seemed to cross socioeconomic lines only for people of color, right? The poor white people and people of color of all socioeconomic status have for decades been treated unfairly. And now we're saying reform is just simply not policing victim crime and abandoning people.
That's not reform.
I know it's not. It's insane. But it's the kind of reform you've been advocating for forever.
You're wrong.
You
have not listened to me.
You've achieved
you
that
have not
goal.
listened to me.
You have achieved
I never ever once advocated
poor black people
defunding the police.
No public safety.
I never advocated remove the police.
Okay.
This is what I did advocate, though. I did advocate remove all white police officers from the black community and let black police officers for 2 years patrol the entire black community, and let's reevaluate after 2 years the number of police complaints about misconduct, excessive use of force, brutality. Let's reevaluate after 2 years the relationship with the community to its police officers, because obviously what it appears to look like, the overwhelming majority based on factual data of excessive use of force complaints is always a white officer dealing with a black individual in the black community. When cops are killing black men, the overwhelming number of those young black men are being killed by white police officers. So I did advocate bring in police officers who look like the community, who have an invested interest in the community, who understands the cultural concepts and norms of the community and can speak the language of the people, then let them do some policing for 2 years and then reevaluate it after that. That's what I advocated for. No black person with sound intelligence want a community with no cops in it. We just want good cops, not killer cops, not abusive cops, not cops who've developed a mindset about us and our community from what they've seen in rap videos and on movies.
One, I must applaud your ability to look into the camera and confidently fabricate statistics. You just make them up because nothing you said was true, but it's impressive how you look at the camera and make it up.
So you got more black cops killing black people.
It is incredible.
So you got more black cops killing black people.
No, when you look at the statistics on it, there's nothing to indicate that a white officer is any more likely to pull a trigger, and let's limit it to the unarmed, than an African American officer.
Do you know that 97%?
Again, you're interrupting me. Let me know when you're done.
Of black officers in America who have been shot in the line of duty were shot by other white officers?
Okay. Again,
that's a fact.
Again, no.
Google it.
That is absolutely not
Google
true.
It. Most 97% of all black cops
absolutely
shot
made up
in a line of duty by other cops were white cops shooting a black officer.
Wait. So now you changed it, right? You said 97% of African American
who were shot in line of duty by other cops were white cops shooting black officers.
Okay. So what you're not talking about, because the first time you said it was 97% of black officers that were shot.
No, you didn't hear correctly what I was saying.
You keep interrupting, but it's not. It's not. You keep parsing it to change it, right? The suggestion that it's white officers out there shooting black officers is insane. But let me finish my point now that you're done with the interruption. My point is not that first of all, how do you sit there with a straight face and argue for segregated America? Oh, we got to remove all whitey because whitey bad, and then complain also about racism in the same conversation. It's such an absurdist hypocrisy that I think you know that you're being dishonest. So I'm impressed with the dishonesty as a lawyer. You really missed your calling. You would be much better at doing what I do when we're not up here, probably than me, because I don't have the stomach for all the
admit
lying.
that you work in a profession of professional
Oh,
liars.
yeah, no, goodness, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. And most lawyers I can't even stand. But let's focus on the apples and the artichokes, right? We began with this discussion, and I was saying this is horrible. I didn't ask anyone to be empathetic. I think so. We have a stabbing of somebody that shouldn't be empathetic. You talked about the officers that were telling him to get off. Of course, there were officers. Those two officers, both officers of color, both rookies, one directly under him as FTO, both sent to prison by an overzealous state attorney who just wanted to make a name for himself and not, I mean, it's absurd that those two young officers, but neither of them should be. I'm not talking about neither of those two rookies of color.
The rookie cop who was under his supervision should not have been put in prison.
Right, and neither then that was a South Asian, and the black cop
rookie cop
shouldn't have been sent to prison either. It's disgusting,
because
right?
Derek was under his supervision.
They were both rookies,
a straight rookie.
Right, both of them were straight rookies. It's disgusting, and it's a disgusting outcome. But Derek Chauvin, and he wasn't on his neck. It was very clear that he was on his back, but that back compression is what killed George Floyd. There are a great number of conservatives that want to talk about the 75% blockage in his heart and all the fentanyl he consumed that both could have been fatal, most certainly. They want to talk about his past of the home invasion with a gun to the stomach, his criminality and all that. None of that changes the fact that his chest was compressed, and his chest was compressed for absolutely no reason other than, I guess, Chauvin was mad, and that's what led to his death.
I saw a knee on the neck.
Well, it was from an angle, and they changed the angle. I saw a knee on the neck. If you watched the trial, you would know that it was on the back, but absolutely, it was that knee on the back. They established it medically, right, and it should have never happened, and it led to the death. The fact that the other two officers that were restraining him, that were asking Derek, well, should we roll him over? It's disgusting that they're in prison, but it's not as disgusting as the murder. But when we talk about this assault, if you want to cheer that a bad guy got hurt in prison, great. I don't care. He is a bad guy. He's a murderer. But we need to have a conversation, much like the conversation how violent our schools are and how students aren't protected. For the great number of people, we love to send people to prison. We love to send black men to prison. And they suffer more because of outsized prison rape.
Prison in America was built for black men.
And prison rape.
Prison in America was built for black men. That's why they had the convict lease program. Okay. Prison in America wasn't built for white guys. It was built to house black men from the very beginning of it.
There are tons of white people in our prison system.
Stop. There's not tons. Stop. There's not tons. Stop it. Go to any prison in America, if it's not Montana, Idaho, North Dakota, or Utah, there's not tons of white men in prison. Okay. Go to any prison, the white boys are always outnumbered in prison.
Anyhow, but the truth is our prison system is not reforming anyone. They are horribly undermanned, understaffed, underfunded, and they are teaching criminals to be worse criminals.
Why?
Well, because we don't have our priorities straight in this country.
That's not why.
Okay.
Because when they allow private prisons to come into the game and allow them to be put on stock markets to where you can invest in private prison stock now and buy it, Charles, it became extremely profitable to keep the recidivism rate going over and over again. So if you rehabilitate those prisoners and they don't come back, then you're killing people's investments into private prisons. It's a big money-making thing now.
It is. The prison complex is a huge...
The industrial complex.
It is huge profit driver as a result of Reagan-era privatization, and it's all horrible. But if
remember our brother Jay-Z owned stock in a private prison?
Well, I mean, there's so many people that have made money off it, and at the end of the day, we need to readdress who we're sending to prison. We shouldn't. No one that is convicted or arrested for mere drug possession should be anywhere other than a hospital if they need it for addiction, right? It's absurd that there are so many people in our prison system, both state and federal, merely for possessing drugs, right? It's disgusting. And at the end of the day, we need to redefine who we're putting, because now we're still locking those people up, but it's become a revolving door for violent murders. Fentanyl kills more people in about 60% of the country from 18 to 44 than anything else.
How many do you think every year?
Yeah, I don't know. It's an unbelievable number.
All right, so let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Israel lost 1,300 people in that terrorist attack by Hamas. Mm-hmm. America has lost hundreds of thousands to fentanyl poison
Okay.
coming across the borders of Mexico.
Well, it comes from China, mostly in Mexico.
Okay,
and other
but
central- right.
America sending aircraft carriers in the waters to send a message to all who will support Hamas, we will go to war with you if you do. How in the hell can we not declare war as a United States government against that type of mass killing in America coming across the borders of Mexico and the drug cartels in Mexico? You explain that to me.
No.
How is it we can lose all those tens of thousands of lives, but we don't have nearly half the reaction that we gave to Israel for 1,300
I don't
lives?
think we need to minimize the horror.
Is
of
that not what we're
October
doing
7th.
in America? We minimizing our death.
I don't think. Well, hold on. I agree with you that we do far too little for Americans in America. We're far too worried about foreign aid. We're far too worried about what goes on in the rest of the world and not addressing. And like I talk about, I'm a drug war abolitionist, right? I think we need to largely end the drug war. But fentanyl isn't a drug. Fentanyl is designed just to kill people, right? And it's something that should never be legalized or decriminalized. And it's something that should become the sole. We still spend so much effort trying to limit the importing of marijuana into this country that creates all the crime around marijuana, right? All the crime from marijuana is created by its prohibition and our appetite for it, not by the use of marijuana, right? But fentanyl should be the federal government, the DEA's only focus. Fentanyl and crystallized methamphetamine. But of course, if we gave everyone access, other than just rich white people who seem to have an unlimited access to Adderall, if we gave everyone access to the amphetamines they wanted, to the ability to go buy clean cocaine and pay whatever tax it is, the ability to buy opioids, and the ability of the federal
I'm not interrupting you. Drug addicts.
And the ability for the federal government and state and local governments to find people that are addicts and put them in hospitals and not prisons, right? And I charge people, if you're a drug user and you're endangering your child or neglecting, put your ass in prison, right? People that are harming others, but people that are just harming themselves.
We're addicted to too much drugs in America, Charles.
But people should have the liberty. But fentanyl is different. Fentanyl, because people can't go buy safe opioids.
But we're addicted to drugs as a nation, Charles.
But because we have an appetite for it.
So let me ask you
the
this.
rest of the world.
If you got a headache,
the human condition
if you got a headache
has
from stress,
always had an appetite for
so
drugs.
If you're stressed, if you're stressed out, take a drug. If you got problems at work, take a drug. If you got problems with your wife, take a drug. Problem with your kids, take a drug. Problem with your husband, take a drug. You don't like your coworker, take a drug. You can't sleep at night, take a drug. You can't get up in the morning, take a drug. Oh, and if your wife wants you to be ready at the right moment and you can't be ready, we got a drug for you. Charles, everything in this country is, whatever the problem is, take a drug.
Okay, again.
We've even taught our kids that, Charles. Kids, Charles, when I was growing up, the belt was the greatest behavioral drug I had ever seen.
I think
I saw straight cold-blooded gangsters.
I do not
with
disagree.
That board, with that coach,
I do
that
not
board with that principal,
disagree
and that belt with mom and daddy.
We are incredibly
was the best behavioral drug I ever seen.
Over medicating children, and we are doing it all because parents don't want to parent their damn kids.
Yes.
Right. But drugs have also saved a great number of lives. The pharmaceutical companies do things that are good and they are bad. But my real concern is actual results, right? So when you can be dismissive, oh, we shouldn't do this. Yeah, people shouldn't be addicted to drugs, shouldn't people try. But right now we live in America where in every major city and most urban and rural areas, there are people with 3D printed drug presses. And they are making pills with a fentanyl base that look like real Xanax, that look like real opioids. And people think they're taking a real pill. And they're really taking fentanyl, and children are dying. You know, teenagers, young teens, all the way up.
So they're not importing it; they're just making it here.
Well, no, they import the fentanyl and they press it here. Okay, and what I am saying is a new paradigm where there are many drugs that are bad, but at least you could go to the store and buy safer drugs.
So if what you're saying is
true,
and I believe it is, Charles.
Buy the safer drugs, and if you commit a crime while you're on those drugs, holds you to account.
But Charles, so why is there no war on fentanyl, Charles?
But I don't know, because our government sucks, and I'm saying there should be.
That answers my question.
Well,
right
there
there.
you go.